welcome to another episode of the Heart Next Door podcast. We are so super excited to share space with you. As you know, this season we are diving deep into family wellness and maternal health. And today I have another phenomenal woman, another phenomenal expert that I'm just so grateful that our paths are crossed and aligned. Welcome, Shardae Herriford.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of
Tierney.
course,
I appreciate you
of
so
course.
much. Thank you.
Of course, I'm so happy that you're here. I want to just take a few moments to honor your experience, and I want to read your bio.
Okay.
As a perinatal wellness specialist with over 2 decades of dedicated service in community health and public service, she brings a wealth of experience and expertise to the field. With a dual Bachelor of Science in Kinesiology and Human Biology, complemented by a Master of Science in Chemical Biology, her academic foundation is robust. For more than a decade, her focus has been on nurturing mothers and babies, specializing in mother-baby postpartum care, special care nursery, neonatal intensive care unit, and pediatrics. She holds a prestigious certificate in global quality maternal and newborn care from Yale Health, further affirming her commitment to excellence in maternal health. In her role as a childbirth educator, her expertise extends beyond clinical care. She is deeply engaged in all aspects of the mat with a particular emphasis on perinatal mental health, community advocacy, and patient rights. In addition to experience as a full-spectrum doula, she integrates lactation and milk feeding skills, provides comprehensive support to mothers and families, and moreover, she actively contributes to the administrative side of maternal health, navigating policies and insurance changes to address social determinants of health issues. Her involvement ensures the families facing socioeconomic challenges receive the support they need to thrive. Dedicated to promoting health equity, especially among vulnerable populations, she is on a lifelong journey of cultural competence. Her passion lies in empowering Black families across the United States and the African diaspora. Wow. Her mantra, wellness for families, creating happy baby bonds, encapsulates her belief in the transformative power of nurturing relationships with a genuine commitment to providing families with a pleasant, safe, and heart-filled health and wellness experience. She continues to make a meaningful difference in the lives of those she serves. Wow. Welcome, Shardae.
I'm like, wait, I know I did all those things, but it's crazy when you read it out loud because you're like, wow, like
that's
crazy.
A lot. Yeah. Wow, so much to unpack, such a wealth of experience you have, such a beautiful mission that you're working towards, and I'm just so excited to learn more about you. So I want to know, just based off of your experience, it seems you have a very robust educational background, first of all. So chemical biology, I know we mentioned some, you have some experience in tourism, so many different things. And can you tell me, how has that informed the work that you do today?
So, I kind of got to approach this differently, but I often have a lot of people say, like, I was born to a teen mom. And so I think that a lot of the experiences I had, like helping raise my siblings as being like the eldest child, kind of extra responsibilities kind of fall on you.
Yeah.
So I kind of raised my youngest brothers, like from infancy, in addition to my mom.
Wow.
And so I think that's where it kind of started. And then I would just, like, I wasn't a nanny or a babysitter, but I would just help all my friends who had babies. One of my sisters, sorority sisters in particular, she always just gave me a shout out because when she was in med school, I would just come and get the baby from her, like, so she can study and prepare for her test.
Yeah.
And she's a full doctor and everything now, but like those pivotal points like kind of like made a big difference in her career now, and just having that support system. So I didn't know at the time what I was really doing. I was just being involved around babies until I got involved in the actual birthing experience, like at the hospital. So I was working in the hospital since I was 13. That's why I have over 2. Yeah, everybody always say, where you
sounds like some child labor laws were violated.
So it started like in high school, they have like small little organizations, and the nurse at our school, I went to inner city school, so you know.
Are you from Detroit?
Resources. Yes, I'm from Detroit.
Okay,
so, as they say in Detroit, 7 mile better mile.
I love it.
That's where I'm from. So I grew up in the inner city.
Yeah.
So she was trying to create a difference for youth who were interested in like health allied sciences, and so I was like determined, like I'm going to go to school to be a doctor, and so all of like the young ladies that were in 9th grade, it was our first year between 13 and 14. She created an opportunity at a hospital called Sinai Grace where we got to go and volunteer.
Wow.
And so that's like further affirmed. I was already interested, but her making that opportunity present itself was literally like a catalyst effect in my life. So I always reach out to Nurse Barrow. So shout out to Nurse Gretchen Barrow. She's probably like one of the most pivotal people that has helped me on my journey thus far, because I can say that I've been in the hospital setting for over 20 years.
Wow.
And so I think from there, paired with working in the allied organization and then going to college, I knew that I wanted to be a doctor and I wanted to be in this space and I wanted to help. And so that's what I did, human biology. But I love how wellness and like healthy aspects, so that's where the kinesiology kind of came and paired in. As I was going through mother baby, working in mother baby postpartum, NICU, special care pediatrics, I pursued a biochem master's at U of M.
Girl,
and so
more power to you.
I honestly, at the time, I didn't want to get a master's. I really didn't. I just was like, what's the point? But I know that God literally does everything for a reason without us even knowing.
That's so true.
And so I got the master's in biochem, and then I started looking at like how, on a physiological level, how we're affected on a physical level. And so then I kind of like merged that into like maternal health. So then I started looking at, how does a placenta affect the mom versus the baby? And how does like androgens and how does the receptors receive things in utero?
Wow.
So it's like kind of taking, like maternal health is so vast. Of course, we have the things that are going on in the hospital, but I like to look at all aspects of maternal health, and it literally starts in utero. So epigenetics, what type of environment was the mom in before she even got pregnant?
Wow.
Was it, was the sun shining? So she already predisposed to depression before she even has. So it's like those small things, like even living in Michigan, we have a higher rate of depression just because we don't get that many sunny days.
I did not know that. I bet especially at this time of year, it's almost the holidays, the winter is coming, seasonal depression, I bet
is so real.
Yeah.
And so I feel like noticing those endeavors and knowing how like your environment literally impacts the way that your DNA is replicated was really like interesting to me. One thing in particular was I found out that in your DNA, the more wound your DNA up, how tight it is, it's like that's a good DNA. But when you start getting stressed, it's something called CG islands that gets attached to your DNA, like these methyl islands. And that makes your DNA not so tightly wound. So things like stress is adding on there. So when you're already dealing with those things, you have a baby, their DNA is unwound.
Wow. No.
So it literally shows that it's like more than just the physical, it's literally genetic. So if you're already having those issues, then, and then you have a baby, the baby is a replica of you. They're like 2.0.
Wow. So can we talk about that? Because that is so, so interesting and so profound to me. And it's nice to hear that, backed up from a professional and educational perspective, because at the event that we had for the book, the panel event, waking up to...
It was amazing.
Thank you so
Shout
much.
out to her, y'all. She's amazing.
No, shout out to everybody who participated in. But someone mentioned, it was, she's a doula, Angeline Love. You probably know her.
I've met
amazing.
her. Yeah, she's amazing too.
Yes, so many amazing people. Yes, but shout out to Angeline Love, because she brought up a very interesting perspective. She was just saying that a lot of the times, we're talking about maternal health and all these poor outcomes for Black women in particular. Why is it so disproportionately bad for us, the outcomes, And she was saying that something that we don't think about is that we carry trauma in our bodies naturally, stress, as you would say. And so if that is true, when you think about generational trauma that we carry as Black people, as Black women in this country in particular, you know what I'm saying, with our ancestors and our lineage and all the trauma that we've experienced, just, coming from Africa to here as slaves, that's a lot.
It's so much.
That's a lot.
It's so much. And I often say this to people a lot of times, that disabilities or illnesses are not always seen. And I try to put like emphasis on like people who are hard of hearing or have disabilities with their brain or multiple sclerosis. They can tell you I'm in pain, or people who have like sickle cell can tell you in pain, but you're not going to see it physically. So I think a lot of times as society, we don't highlight people's invisible disabilities or the things that people can't see. It's like, in order for me to validate you, I need to see that you have postpartum depression. And it's like it shows up in different ways. People think like, oh, it's sad. Sometimes you want to have your baby to yourself and you don't want anybody to have your baby, or you want to be so far away from the baby because of just changes. And how was the mental state before? Like, it's so important to just look at the whole aspect. That's why, like, I love maternal health, number one, because it creates the next generation. So we all know that, like, in order for us to continue to even have population, women have to have babies, or birthing people have to have babies. And so just being very intentional and looking at the whole aspect and the intersectionalities of what a mother is, and and how does her life impact her infant and in utero. It's so many other things. Like, you just be like, wow, like this could happen. Because I don't want to say pregnancy is a disability, because it's not, but it does put extra things on your body. A lot of women can be super healthy and no issues, never been to the hospital before, and they have a baby, and now they have issues with their pelvis. Now they have back issues. Now pelvic floor issues, residual placenta, just everything that kind of comes with it. And I think sometimes I don't know if it's just society. I think it's actually just like the world, just as of my travels, even outside of Africa, just in Asia, because I just got back from Thailand and doing work around maternal health.
Around the world,
working on sustainable development goals.
That's
it's so
amazing.
Serious. The sustainable development goals by 2030 is so important. It's so important.
And for people who don't know what those are, can you please explain
that?
So
the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals is like a goal that we create for the world. So all of the countries come together and kind of come up with these main topics that they feel like needs to address certain things. So that's like food insecurity, maternal health and wellness, social determinants of health, just kind of all those things. And so they did this in about 2020. So they usually give like a decade. And so that's how I based the baby bond off of, was literally off of sustainable development goals, because I knew I wanted to impact how the world was looking at maternal health, not just in the place that I was at. So I think it's just important. Thank you. I think it's important just to educate yourself, because sometimes we think we living in our own bubble here, and people literally are experiencing the same things in other
around
places.
The world.
They are.
Wow, that's so beautiful. Okay, now
I get so excited.
Me too. You make me so excited. I could just go on and on into
so about this all day.
Yes, into that in particular, especially just the DNA, the biology aspect. I never ever thought about that before. So deep. I know we could go real deep, but I'm gonna try to stay focused. So tell me about the baby bond. Tell me. I know that's your baby. So tell me where, how is it birthed? What is your mission? And how is that a part of the work that you do too?
So I kind of briefly mentioned when I knew that I wanted to help families, and I knew that I always wanted to work in healthcare. But when I started working in mother baby, I was like, this is it. Like that light goes off. Like, your purpose, and you kind of going like along a journey. But when I started working in mother baby, I was like, oh, this is for me. This is where I'm supposed to be. Just knew that was my purpose. Like, I don't know how to explain it. And I feel fortunate, because some people say like, oh, I still don't know my purpose. And I'm like, I just feel fortunate that I know. Like, it brings me joy every day. So the baby bond kind of started around me working in mother baby, just seeing the inadequacies, things that could have been explained more, taking the time to make moms feel more human after giving birth. And I had this midwife who was like, oh, you should be a doula. And I'm like, no, I'm going to school to be a doctor. And I was like, and I could be a doula. She's like, no, because then we had this conversation about black maternal health. And I want to put emphasis that she was not black, but she was advocating for black health. And so she started giving me experiences that she experienced on advocating for her black patients.
Wow, we love the allies.
Surely.
Wow.
One instance in particular, she told me that doctor, before they went in, she's a midwife, so she's seeing them, and there's various midwives. People don't know it's like 3 of them, and so
I
it's
didn't know
important
that.
to know the 3 different
Wow.
type of midwives. There's professional midwives,
Okay.
and there's the certified nurse midwives, and then there's just like midwives. So it's like knowing the difference and what type of provider you want is so important too, because
Wow.
everybody does not can work under the same type of licensure, if that makes sense.
Okay. So
it's
do they
usually
all
certified
work in
midwife.
different settings, like a professional? Do they all work in the hospitals, or do maybe
I would say
some work
depending on the
at?
state.
Oh.
And I would also say depending on if people are working genuinely in a license, because what I mean by that is like we know doulas, and just the difference between a doula, because a lot of people think doulas are birthing babies. They don't. They support, and I can explain that a little bit later, the difference between all 3, the OBGYN, a midwife, and a doula. But sometimes on social media people want home births, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it's important to know your state. But then also the doula cannot birth your baby, but there are some doulas who are birthing babies. So I said that to say that it's important to just know whoever is your provider or who's working with you, are they certified, and even if they want a different type of route, just the validity of it.
Definitely for safety purposes.
Yes, heavy on the safety. That's so important, especially within the Black population and families. She said they walking into the room and the mom had to have a cesarean, and the doctor looked at her and said, "Watch me do the cesarean in less than 5 minutes."
5 minutes.
So his mindset was,
So he thought it was a game. He made a game out of it.
I wouldn't necessarily say it was a game, but we also have to know that providers still have lives. They still have kids. They still have dentist appointments. They still have families. And so sometimes we put them in this hierarchy and not know, like, okay, that there are people outside of this. So if, just hypothetically, say it's their birthday and they party at 6 and you delivering at 4.
I mean,
I know that's what we're supposed to be doing. That's supposed to be the integrity portion. That's why we even having these conversations right now. That's why we having the whole interview, is because there are people in the world who are thinking like that and who are taking care of families and babies. And so hearing things like that, when talking to her, it made me think about it. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe I'll be a doula. And I'm like thinking about it, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna become a doula. And then from there, it was just a ripple effect. I knew I wanted to be intentional about the name. I think bonding, you can bond with anyone. And so I love that the baby bond is not very, it's like I'm bonding with my baby, but also bonding with other people. You get to bond with the baby. And so that's the reason why I chose that name.
I love it.
And so, I'm really proud. I was like, okay, I thought this one through, and so that's kind of where it came from, ultimately the name. And then when I picked the mission, ultimately, I knew that I wanted to do global maternal health. Like I knew when I decided I was going to start my business or start helping families, I was like, okay, I want to do global maternal health. And so that's why I was very intentional.
And had you already experienced assisting with maternal health abroad, or not yet?
No, I actually had my first mission trip in my early 20s, and it changed my life.
Yeah, me too.
It was a little bit after my mom had passed away. And so, thank you. So I think I was like, not searching for myself, but I just kept telling my sister, like, I really need to go to the mission trip. I don't know why. And right now in this moment, full spectrum, full circle, because I needed to go, because I needed to know how it works, how it maneuvers, and what type of people you want around, so that now when I'm doing it, it doesn't feel like so cumbersome.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I love that too. And I think it's so beautiful that you said that you felt like you needed to almost find yourself, because I remember when I went on my first mission trip, it was actually to Haiti with my church, and it was so beautiful. But I remember a quote that they shared with us then, is that the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. And that's so true. That's by Gandhi, and that's so beautiful. I love that you had that experience.
It really changed me. We were turning schools, hospital clinics, anything we could into a clinic. And we had a physician come, and we had a PA, and then anybody that came, we just serviced them. So we were giving glasses. They were doing ear irrigations. Wow. It was just whatever we could with the things that we had. We were just trying to service them. And we went to Belize. So it was just being connected and realizing, like, okay, like those little lights, like I said, the little light bulbs happen in my life, and I know that that's one of the ones. And I was okay, I don't know why this is so important right now, because I'm only, I think I was like 23. I'm only 23. But now it's like I see why. It was because God was preparing me for what was to be, so I can be prepared, you know. So I'm honestly just openly grateful for the opportunity to be able to have went and be able to work alongside. There's so many amazing people who care about other people, because that's important to me.
Yeah, it is. And I love too that, you know, I know you just went to Thailand, but I know you do a lot of work in Uganda in particular, and even how you were sharing with me before we started that every time you go there, you feel an immense sense of, you know, gratitude, and like, it's just so beautiful how we're all connected. And I do believe too that even just thinking about the mission of maternal health, and even what we're talking about, just like the stress that African American women that we've experienced in this country, I think that's so beautiful that you're able to go back to where it all started, to the land of like our ancestors, and like to pour in that way, you know. In
Uganda actually was one of the first to do the cesareans, and people don't even know that. Yes.
Oh, yes. That's a whole nother conversation in itself.
It's a whole nother conversation, but they were safe. Like they weren't having it. So that just lets you know, like, how is it that, like, it's, you know, we have so many more amenities, but then, you know, that's the origin of it. And so it's just like, what type of intentionalities are we having when we're doing these things? And so we went to Uganda in 2022, and then we went to Liberia in 2023.
One of my best friends is from Liberia.
And then seeing like the difference, because we've been to Africa. So Uganda is East Africa and Liberia is West Africa, and looking at the difference between even what they call like pads. They call it blue biscuit, or they don't call it menstrual, they call it receiving.
Blue biscuit.
Well, because back in the day when they were donating pads, it was blue and they just called it blue biscuit. So even if it says Tampax, Kotex, they still call it blue biscuit.
Wow.
Yeah. So it just the different languages, because when we're facilitating education, I can't walk up and say, you're menstrual. I have to know what is it that you call it. So they call it receiving. So this month we're receiving. So just like, that's super important, just knowing like the cultural differences, but also the similarities. That just the storytelling. That's why I you know, want to elevate just your platform and how brave you are to be putting yourself out there to talk about that, so that other moms can feel supported. They don't feel like they're the only one dealing with it, or they don't feel like they can't share their story. So definitely, you know, you being brave and being you know, and just the experience. So I hope God continue to heal your body.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And one thing too, it's just like, because we were talking about this too, it's not natural, I guess, to me to share in this way. But whenever I had that traumatic, the birth of my daughter, it was a beautiful blessing, but it was also very traumatic. And that was the only way that I could heal, really, you know, is writing and sharing. And God told me to share my story. So I'm just very thankful, you know, that I'm thankful for the healing. I know that if we all share our stories, we all can heal. You know, just imagine how powerful that will be. So that's why I'm so thankful to have conversations with amazing people like you.
Thank you. Storytelling is so important. Indigenous populations, they put a lot of emphasis on storytelling, because that's how they pass information along the generations. And so I think that a lot of times we kind of moved away from storytelling within the Black community. I think, obviously for multiple reasons, systemic and things like that, but we don't have as many elders and having family dinners like we used to have, and cookouts where people are talking about your great aunt, where people are, you know, having division within their families and not having that healing before someone may pass, or wait until a monarch in their family, like a great grandmother, passed away in order for everybody to come and be around one another. And I think that has you know, family dinners I've noticed are not really a thing anymore, where people are actually sitting down at the dinner table kind of talking about your day. And that's storytelling. That's like letting people be open, because a lot of times we think like, oh, maybe they understand, and sometimes we don't. Again, like that invisible thing. How important it is for us to just connect with other people. Also a level of humility and being understanding, because your situation may be different than somebody else, but also having that empathy. I'm a very empathetic person. Everybody around me knows that. And so I just feel like I could just feel, I don't know how I can explain it. I could just feel. So I'm always like listening. I just think that people had a little more empathy.
This world would be so much better.
A little more compassion.
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. And I love that so much. And I want you to just talk to me a little bit. I know that one of your emphasis at the Baby Bond is just on holistic wellness. And so can you talk to us about why you feel that's so important to, you know, implement that in the care that you provide for your clients?
Yeah, holistic is important to me. Sometimes when people think holistic, they be like, "Oh, it's the hippies and the trees and the wave," and it's not bad. It's just like a whole mind, body, and spirit connection. And giving birth is like a marathon. Yeah. And I always talk about this generally because I've never given birth, but I have been pregnant because in my early 20s I experienced an ectopic pregnancy. And so I actually had my own experience with the system and being around and like, you know, how that made me feel. So I think it's just like the overall like well-being of the person. So I'm like, okay, let's start with a lot. And when I do my own childbirth education series, which is coming up soon, if y'all interested, in a lot of my presentations, I also talk about how do you learn. Like that's where I start first. Are you an audio learner? Are you a kinetic learner? Because I want to make sure that I'm connecting each one of my families, because usually they come in a couple. Birthing person and partner, or mom and dad, whichever you prefer, and supporting them on what looks like for them to learn. And so I noticed that dad's kind of like a more like fun approach. They like more like, oh, I'm just gonna take the kid and we're just gonna go outside. And the mom like, no, change diapers. But I'll be like, okay, how do you learn, and then how do they learn? So I think that's important too, is how do we learn, how do we process information in order to make all those things connect? Of course, because I can tell you something, but how can we apply it? So more holistic, not necessarily like some people do herbs. I wouldn't necessarily say that I provide any herbs, that I know people who do herbs. I would just say that holistic to me is just more like mind, body, and spirit, and how we can connect those in the birthing space. For example, even on the biology level, that's what I mean. It's like looking at the whole person and what happened genetically, what happened in your maternal history, what happened in your paternal history, so that we can get right to this spot and we can address this. But sometimes we got to go back to get to where we are here. Ooh, if that makes sense.
That's that African proverb. Yes, ma'am. Yes, I definitely agree, and I think that's so beautiful. And I really do feel like, because my background is actually in education, I used to be a teacher.
I can tell by the softness of your voice.
Yeah, I used to teach pre-K, so had a lot of patience. Yes, but I know that was something that was always so important to me, to not treat kids like they're blank slates. Because if you show up to school on the first day and you treat everybody in your classroom the exact same, that's not going to work, because this baby may be in a situation where he doesn't live with mom and dad, or this baby may be in a situation where he didn't have a chance to eat breakfast, this morning, or it's just, everybody's so different. And I think that when you look at the person as a whole and to pay attention to, like you said, mind, body, and spirit, and realize how connected they are, I think that's the key to healing. That's the key to thriving. That's why I dress kids.
That's why when I always hear people like, you be talking to the babies. I do, because they understand their cells replicating. They replicated so fast within a month. I mean, in a year, 9 months. So you think that they're just going to stop because they were born. And some people, I think, because they see them, they're like, oh, well, they can't talk. But they're mimicking everything from infancy. Girl. So your face, when people are like, oh, why she making that face? Do you be making that face? I always tell moms, they be like, I don't know where she got that from. I'm like, okay. Or they doing something funny. That's dad doing. I'm like, okay, because you can't. That's why I said they're 2.0 of you. Like, they just mirror. That's their whole. That's so but true. I also, again, I go deep into infancy and around biology and just how, what is his name? I can't think of it. It'll come back to me. But he talks about like object permanence and looks at like all the stages of infant cognitive.
One of those scientists I know, because I was a psych major. Come to my mind. And so and literally that is so important to just observe how do they interact with other people. You got some kids who literally walk up and say hi to everybody, and you got some kids, you look at them, they start screaming. So it's like is their cognitive development, and I think that like first 3 years is so important. Super important. And I can say that especially from a speech therapy's perspective, after having studied, development and whatnot, because I've seen in the classroom where I used to teach in Houston, which is extremely diverse, just like Detroit. Detroit is very diverse, but the school system was extremely diverse, into which like I would have students. I remember I had a class and there were like, within our school, there were 22 different languages that were accounted for at home, And so I had a student, her family was from Eritrea in Africa. And so my baby, she did not speak any English the first day. By the end of the school year, she was fluent in English.
And she was helping her family,
yes,
too.
Yes.
A lot of people don't talk because I
Yes.
also help Hispanic populations, too. Like, my primary focus is Black families, but all families is important to me.
Of course.
But even within Hispanic population, when I'm working with, like, families who don't speak, then it's like now they're sending their 10-year-old daughter to talk about
them.
Her whole health hospital
I've
and
seen
then,
it
you know,
too.
and so that's important. So a lot of times, depending on where they come from, their background, they might have more pressure on them to be more than just their person, but like the spokesperson for the family.
Yes.
So then those pressures come on when the family starts putting more emphasis on you having to do it, and then people choosing to do things that they don't want to do because of the family.
Girl, yeah. So, we can go into family dynamics.
I thought you was deep. It's deep.
It's deep, bro. This is so deep. I'm learning so much from you, Shardae, and I'm just so grateful because your perspective is just so. It's just so valued and so interesting and something that I have not heard. You know, the whole purpose of this journey for me has been just to learn more and more because I was at a place where I was just so lost and so confused myself trying to put my life back together. So I'm just so thankful for you sharing your wisdom because I know it's not only helping me, but it's going to help so many other women and families. Yes. So I want to get into one of your core missions is to help families to build and achieve the life that they truly deserve. And so I wanted you to talk about specifically the programs and the services that you offer to clients and how they help them to achieve that goal.
So I'm a big listener. So I try to just ask people what they want. Sometimes I think in spaces, especially coming from like a health aspect or education aspect, we be like, this is what you need. But everybody needs different things. Everybody needs different sustenance to be who they are. So I offer childbirth education classes. And so we again kind of go through the whole process. I also do a Birth Detroit. I'm a childbirth educator for Birth Detroit. Yes. So I always want to highlight them. Anytime I get an opportunity, they're the first freestanding birth center in Detroit, ran by all Black midwives. So just shout out to them. They're amazing people, and they're helping the community, and they're gonna just literally change the trajectory of birthing spaces. So I always want to shout out Birth Detroit, and if you don't know, please look them up, birthdetroit.org. Please. So but outside of Birth Detroit childbirth education that I do with them, I also have my own, and then I kind of just again we go over the same similar things, just like what to expect when you get there. What is a family-centered cesarean? Some people don't even know you can have a family-centered cesarean. You can have a clear drape instead. You know,
I don't know.
Sometimes, and depending on what state, sometimes they like, I don't want to say latch women, but they kind of like,
restrain women?
So, but it depends on where you go or what state you live in. So just like what ways you can advocate with your family. I do lactation counseling education. So we talk about what plug ducts look like and mastitis and engorgement and like trying to get the baby latched in the first beginning stages and the golden hour, people talk about in the birth crawl. It's so cool that like babies actually can crawl. Like, you can see it on YouTube. Put it in a birth crawl.
Wait, what is that?
So literally, as soon as they're born, if they're uninterrupted, you just literally, you wipe them off, but you don't wipe their hands, and you don't because their hands has the scent of amniotic fluid, and the same scent is also on your areola. So they use that as a way to smell, lick, to find it. So if you put the baby literally on the mom's stomach, now it takes time because obviously mom is tired, baby was just born, so they're tired, so they'll take little breaks. But if you give them time, they literally will crawl up to the breast. It's amazing. It's beautiful.
Oh wow,
it's beautiful.
That almost makes me emotional because I don't know if you know this, but because of my circumstance in the hospital, because of our birth story, I didn't get to hold her for 2 days.
I read your story.
So when I finally did hold her, I remember I cried because as soon as I put her on my chest, she was trying to find where my areola was, and I was just so thankful in that moment because in a weird way I was like, okay, this baby is mine and she still knows me and I'm still her mom, even though we've been separated all this time. She's still mine. So that's so beautiful. I love the birthing experience.
Like,
no.
Because it's just, I hear so many different stories where moms feel like, I had to have a cesarean, I wasn't able to breastfeed. Or moms that want to breastfeed, but they couldn't due to if they had something going on with their anatomy of their breast. Like maybe they had cancer. And so I highlight, like I need need to be better with my social media, but one of my particular reels, I actually highlighted that breastfeeding looks different. So I had a mom working out breastfeeding. I had a mom bowling breastfeeding. That just show like breastfeeding is not, has to be synonymous. It can be in this space, and it doesn't, that each example or experience is different. And I feel like each mom, depending on the circumstance, feel like she was missing out on something in her birth experience. And I think like addressing it and making her feel like whole. I'm just sorry. I guess my brain is going through all the scenarios of moms that I've heard around just cesareans and vaginal births and breastfeeding and all those things, and where they feel like they were lacking something that they felt like they deserve or they didn't get due to someone interfering or some type of intervention.
But thankfully for us, I was still able to breastfeed. I'm still breastfeeding now, and I'm so thankful because I had nurses who, even when I was unconscious for those almost 24 hours, the nurses were literally pumping my breast to make sure that my milk came. So I'm so thankful. I had an amazing medical support team. They were literally pumping me while I was unconscious. So thankfully I'm able to breastfeed today because of them, and even while we were separated, I signed a waiver so that she could have, she was still provided donor milk. So I'm just so thankful for the donors. I didn't even know that was a thing, so I'm just so thankful because I love our bond when we nurse and when we breastfeed. So I'm thankful for that.
I want to highlight Southeastern's IBCLCs. I love community partners, so I just love highlighting other people doing amazing things. Southeastern IBCLCs actually have a mommy milk bank where they will take the milk to the NICU for moms who are having situations like that. So if you're in Michigan or maybe in your local area, see if there's a mommy milk bank who can provide that transportation to make sure your baby has food. Also being open to donors. They do screen them and do everything, but I think it's a highlight, to still see that that's an option. Also community sharing, like someone you trust who it's not hanging out on a week every weekend, but just get this, it can help you feed your baby. Also being open, and that's a level of vulnerability that sometimes I think just as Black women, again, we have that complex of like want to do it all, superwoman, so we feel inadequate when we're not able to do certain things. So just know that your village is there to support you, and there's so many amazing organizations out there who want to provide those services to you.
Amazing girl, you got all the plugs. We're gonna let you do yours, but first, before we wrap and you share with everyone where they can connect with you and all the great things you're doing, I want to just know, from all the amazing work that you've had over 2 decades in this maternal health space, what is one of the stories that still just resonates with you the most about maybe something that was super impactful, an experience that you had, a client that you had? What's a story that just continues to drive you to do the work that you do every day?
That's such a vast, because I feel like I keep the people that I interact with, I keep not a piece of them with me, but I always make sure that whatever connection I have with them, I always try to remember some significance that we shared in that space. I have so many, honestly.
I bet.
I think what keeps me going is my colleagues, for sure. Like, I would definitely say Quantanese, Bonetta, all of like the support people who just be pushing me, because this, community work sometimes can get hard because you can advocate and ask for resources and ask for these monetary donation to help the family, but you're not always granted them when your color, your skin is not always fitting, or if you're not in an established hospital or clinic, a lot of times you kind of get bypassed. So I would say who pushes me for sure is my colleagues, the families that support me. A lot of times I'm feeling like, I so much, or I feel like, I could be doing better, or just the fact that like I need to be better with my online presence. I think for me, like we talked about earlier, it's so important to me doing the work and highlighting, making those families feel beautiful and supported. Like that's so important to me. And so it's kind of hard, like I said, putting that type of stuff like on social media, because I want to show that vulnerability, and I don't want to put a mom in a place where she feel like she's being exploited. But I promise y'all, 2025 is my goal, to be better on social media and put it out there. But let's see, one particular example. Okay, I can give you a recent example. When I was in Thailand, I'm the type of person, I talk to anybody. I literally talk to anybody. I talk to anybody. Everybody knows that and know me. Like, I literally talk to anybody. I met this man from Singapore, and he actually got to open and share his story with me about postpartum depression.
Wow.
And so he said that his wife had the baby, and she just started exhibiting signs of like, you know, that she just was not like herself. And so he started taking more initiative where he was like always doing bath time with the baby at night, you know, trying to take it. And then one day she just left. She left and left him with the babies. What? And then he prayed. She did come back.
Oh, thank God.
But it was the point of like that. I use that example because that's Singapore. Yeah. And sometimes we think like, oh, it has to just be here or this demographic, but we're experiencing this globally.
Everywhere. Yeah.
And it needs to be more important on how we support like the mom during the experience. And sometimes as women, even though we have these parts, these anatomy parts, when we're born, we're not given a whole, you know, lay out on exactly what to do. You have to learn as it comes. When you start your menstrual, you have to learn that. You don't know when it's time to have your, you know, first PAP or things like that. So I would say that definitely stuck out to me as the most recent story, is that how impactful it has to be to have a support system, not to be judged, because her husband was still open to being supportive because he knew what the issue was. And I think that it just shows again that no matter where you are in the world, 6 degrees of separation, as they always say, and that it just doesn't matter if we live in a different continent. People are dealing with similar things. Everybody's just trying to wake up and be the very best that they can. And then when you add more things like being a wife, being a mother, being a daughter, being a colleague, being a boss, being a community person, it can take a lot. So I would say over the time, those stories are very impactful. And then of course the ones where I had to like advocate where moms are maybe hemorrhaging, like I'm in a room with her and like mother baby, I walk in a room and I'm like, this is kind of a lot of blood. I'm like, did anybody go over education with you? She's like, no, the nurse just came in and told me I was okay. So now, you know, I'm seeing, like, I obviously in those type of spaces, like healthcare providers, we can't freak out in front of the patient. Even if it's something that is scaring us, we have to still put on this like this front because we can't freak out. So I'm noticing that this is a lot of blood. So I go and tell the nurse, I'm like, hey, you know, she's bleeding a whole lot. She's like, oh, I just went there to check on her. Something for my better judgment. I just went and got the other nurse like, like, no. And within 10 minutes, she was fading in and out.
Are you serious?
Yes. And we had to do like emergency. And when a mom is having a hemorrhage, there's like pads that we put underneath the mom after she has a baby. And we weigh those to see how much blood she lost was by minusing the actual pad that the blood was absorbed, to see how much she lost, just in case she might need to have, you know, a blood infusion. And so I think that because again, when it happened, the dad was in the room and he didn't know what to do. So then not only do you have to help the mom, you have to navigate the family, and you don't want to displace dad, and you don't want to displace support people. So then again, that's why I think it's so important for your team at the hospital, or just your support team, all being on the same page in regards to what would happen if things do go awry, or just ways we can support mom so that her voice can be elevated, because she didn't feel comfortable enough to like speak up again to the nurse, but because I, you know, you coming in there, thank God that you were there, she was just like, hey, you know, I don't know, I feel like it's a lot of blood, but I'm not sure. And I looked, I'm like, okay. And she was passing clots. And if you see any moms out there who are pregnant, if you see a golf ball size clot passing through multiple times, that's too much blood. If you're filling a whole pad within an hour, that's too much blood. Especially like a full pad after you have delivery, just full blood. Like make sure you keep up. If you're soaking through more than one pad, like 2 and 3 in an hour, that's a lot of blood. And I think just the education around what to expect, or the emergencies, or the preparedness around birth, I think is what really pushes me. I guess to go back to your question, is what really pushes me to keep going, is that those small things, 80% of the situation with moms are preventable. And I know you've heard that. And so it's very upsetting when it's something so small that we could have just been like, okay, well, let's, because then they could have gave her, sometimes some hospitals give Cytotec, or then they also do the fundal massage, which is, you know, uncomfortable for moms, but that kind of helps at least stop the bleeding until they're able to address it. So when I'm doing childbirth education, we actually have props. I have a baby and a placenta, so I actually show what a placenta looks like, what this looks like in utero. So this is it's a hole.
Wow.
This big in your uterine wall because it detaches. So
Yeah.
people don't think about that. So you literally have a whole womb that needs to
Wow.
shrink in size.
Wow.
That's why when moms breastfeeding, their stomach gets those contractions. It's because it's helping the uterus get down to pre-birth size. It will never be the exact same, but it will get down to a very similar size of what your uterus is. So it's so many things that the body is doing naturally through oxytocin. It's just helping, you know?
Yeah, I love it. Well, Shardae, you have such a wealth of knowledge, and I just want you to tell people so that they can, you know, learn more from you and get your services. Tell us, where can we connect with you? How can someone learn more about your services?
Yes, absolutely. I love families. So if you want to come and be a part of the Baby Bond crew, please.
Yes.
If you want family services, or are you looking for like childbirth education or something that I'm offering, you can find me at family, FAMILY, at thebabybond.org. If you're looking to maybe book me for an interview or have me speak at a conference or a baby shower, I do a lot of community baby showers around advocacy and things like that. You can find me at HELLO, HELLO, at thebabybond.org. You can also find me at www.thebabybond.org and on all social medias at the Baby Bond. And I have like a heart. It's a baby with a heart.
Yes, I love your logo.
You can't really miss it.
Yes.
And so you can find me all over. I would love to bond with you. I also provide help you with birth plans, and I know that's like a big thing. I also do have little onesies that I provide.
Aww.
And I also have like holiday cards for families, so like baby cards, gender reveal cards, so small things like that. And that's where the Birth and Beyond comes from, because it's just more of the aspect again to support the families. So thank you for listening today. Listening to me blab all day about
no, this is like
so important about like I love it. Like I love maternal health, and I just hope that I can continue to be in a space to learn, to share. So I'm just grateful to, like I said, know my purpose. So I'm humbled by it all.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing space with us, and we'll see you next time, guys. Thank you for watching.
Thank you. Bye.